Good afternoon. It's just gone 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday the 9th of November. Now, I've just got onto the Bath to Bristol bicycle track about a mile from my home, and I'm off on my first hot tent wild camp of the autumn. I ought to just say at this point, I'm fairly new to hot tent camping, so I'm by no means an expert. I'm still on that big learning curve, and today it's just about trying out my equipment again before the new season starts really. I'm only going about 5 miles from home, a shade over. I found a crafty little campsite. Well, I've always eyed it up and I always thought it's probably too close to home to bother with, but I've always fancied it, and I suddenly thought, what a great place to get my equipment out from its summer hibernation and just start using it again. So that's what this is all about. You may get the gist. I'm heading out to what I call Boydford. If you look it up on Google Maps or anywhere on the internet, you'll find it doesn't exist. Geographically, it's where the River Boyd flows into the River Avon, and there's a little picnic area there. It's a fair distance from any main roads, so I should be okay there. But there are river moorings there and a little pontoon. Whether anybody's hooked up there at the moment, I really don't know. The week before I went to Brecon Youth Hostel, I put the Woods Walker titanium stove together just to make sure it all fits and works still. Reminded myself how to roll the pipe. I'm also going to be trying out my new head torch that I made the last video about. I'll reiterate again, it's not a review, how can it be? I haven't used it yet. But there's a couple of things I wanted to add to that video actually. One that I discovered and one that was pointed out to me, so I want to share those with you. The bike weighs an absolute ton, metaphorically. It's probably intrinsically it's not that far off. I've got all my food with me, my water, and also all my firewood. It's been raining solidly for about the last week or so I don't think there's going to be any dry wood on the ground. Whether there's any standing dead wood where I'm going, I'm not sure, but as I say, it is a sort of designated picnic site, so I don't want to be going around damaging trees. I'm just not sure what's there. I used the Bath to Bristol Pass a lot, and a friend of mine used to say, don't you ever get bored with the same way in and out of Bath? Well, no, because I don't always use the same way, but this is always different. There's always something to see. I'm now crossing the River Avon for the third time since I've got on this former railway. I think it crossed a couple of times on the outskirts of Bath as well, so quite an engineering challenge to get it through this valley. There's a lovely Kelston Round Hill right behind me. Fancy a wild camp up on that sometime as part of the Cotswold Way. Anyway, you may soon get dazzled by the sun. About another mile that way, just after we cross the River Avon again, because it's like curling round, meandering, I'll be turning left, going down to a picnic site where the River Boyd flows into it. Hence the thumbnail of this video, Boyd Mouth. I'm now at Avon Riverside. This is a station that was purposely built for the Heritage Railway that basically runs from the former Bitton Railway Station, about a mile or so along there. It goes towards Bristol about a mile and a half, and it also comes this way a mile and a half. And the reason I think they built this station is so people can alight here, walk down onto the riverbank, and I think sometimes they do boat trips from here, but it's basically the southern terminus of about 3 miles of Heritage Railway. So just at the far end of the station, where the tracks become single again, as you can see, crossing of the River Avon, and this is our destination. Just behind those trees there is a little picnic site. You can sort of see people do more of their boats there, so I will have company tonight. Just along there, you may see at the end of the bridge, there's a slope as the tarmac starts heading you down on a big S-bend down to the picnic site. Let's go and see if it's feasible. The sun's just gone behind a cloud and it's very low now anyway, and all of a sudden the wind's picked up and there's quite a nip in the air actually. Here we are, heading down here. I better put the camera away before I fall off the boat trying to manoeuvre that hairpin. And this is it. You can see there's some picnic tables down here. A lot of rubbish waiting to be collected by the look of it. And this open space. I'm going to put my tent up there somewhere. I'm going to be seen whatever happens, but I'm going to try and not make it too obvious. Just at the end of this field, that line along there, that would be the River Boyd, just about to flow in the River Avon. Let's take a walk across a little bridge through there and I'll try and show you. Just at the end of the field, little footpath come across this wooden bridge. That's the River Boyd flowing down from just north of the M4. I'll put a map on the screen now to give you an idea, but there's lots of tributaries that flow into it on its course down here. 7 miles, I believe. And then of course it's a tributary flowing into the River Avon now. It's quite high and it's flowing fast. Let's have a wander down on the pontoon if we can. That was the path coming back from the River Boyd, and this is the footpath onto the pontoon on the River Avon. There's the old railway bridge, which is now a cycling footpath. That's what I've just ridden across. There's the bridge right at the end of the pontoon. Ironically, as I was riding along, I passed Kelston Park, where all the slope comes down from a big mansion house and large grounds. There's some trees and woods in there, and there's quite a lot of fallen wood in there. I'd completely forgotten about that, to be honest, so that would have been quite a good wood source. Having said that, I bought lots of wood from home, which I use for my chimney at home, so I know that's been dried all through the summer. I'd like to think not too many people come down here after dark. Who knows, I might be wrong. I first came here with my friend Ian. We used to work together at the post office, and he was doing an end-to-end. He's riding from John O'Groats down to Land's End, basically because he had family down in Cornwall. I tried to advise him against going that in that direction because of the headwinds, but anyway, he rode it, and I was going to join him when he stopped at Bath. He was going to spend one night in his house, and then we were both going to ride down the next day to Exmoor, and then he was going to carry on himself. And he had this new tent, and we actually came out here and just used it as an area. He didn't have a garden like me, he only had a patio, and he wanted to try putting up here, and I've bought a bit of kit down here over the years just to try it, set it up. So I have been down here a few times. I always fancied camping here and always thought I probably won't, but hey, there you go. Never say never. I think that's where I'm going to put my tent up. That's the River Boyd behind me, flowing towards the River Avon. So I'm just going to pop it there. It's quite easy to put up. I'll show you. It goes up in a jiffy. I'll show you what I mean. There you go, up in a jiffy. As you can sort of see, it looks all right on the right hand side. I'm not very happy on the left, so I'm just going to go and try and take that rustling out and put some tension in. That's better. Some of it was just creasing from where it had been folded, but I'm happy with that. It feels quite sturdy. The tent is called Mountain Cattle Camping. I'm guessing that comes from the US. There's a retractable flap there with a tie-up point. Got Velcro to correspond with the stove jack. I just keep that in place basically. It's just less hassle when I set up. You can see it's a bit scorched from last year. I may investigate a new one at some point. And it's got two doors, one at the front, one at the back, 180 degrees. And you've got these ventilation flaps, they just pull out, and you've got these hardened bits of plastic, oh that's right, and some corresponding Velcro just to keep that pulled out. Obviously having a fire inside, you've got to be very careful. I normally bring a CO alarm, carbon monoxide, that we keep by our boiler at home. The only time it ever went off was when I was camping, about the third time I think, with this on the Frostway, and instead of lighting the fire the next morning to do my breakfast, I used the Trangia stove, and that set it off definitely. So obviously you need to be very careful with that. Keep the door open for most of the time cooking. Like most hot stove tents, certainly the ones I've seen, it's a single skin, so obviously there's going to be a bit of condensation issue on the inside. There's a central pole, no ground sheet, so I've bought some ground sheets out. I'll try and 3/4 it's almost circular, octagonal, but I'll try and 3/4 cover it, then have the wood burner down there so the stovepipe comes out through there, and I'll keep my wood pile down there as well. I bought quite a lot of it. I've got a full front pannier of logs. I've got 2 carrier bags strapped to the back. That will be intermediate logs which I can just chop up and make tinder out of that. There's the Woods Walker titanium wood stove, all packed away, flat packed in its canvas case. Let's get that assembled. Stove all neatly hinges and clips together. Now I just need to get it in position underneath the aperture on the stove jack, get the pipe rolled, and then get it all in place. Once the pipe's burnt in, it tends to hold its memory. You'll see what I mean when it folds like that, and if you let it out, it should remember its shape at 90 degrees perpendicular. You'll see what I mean. Almost. It's 5:15 at my campsite. Right behind the tent is the River Boyd, where it's just about to flow into the River Avon. I call it Boydmouth. On the map you'll see it marked as Bitton Picnic Area. I've got my teepee tent with my titanium wood burner inside there. I'm just about to light it and then cook my tea on it. Sweet and sour chicken and rice, followed by chocolate pudding, 2 pints of Carlsberg. Just about to light the stove. Got my cotton wool makeup wipes. Got some of these firelighters. It's basically sweepings up of wood shavings with wood wax compressed together. A little bit of starting wood. Put some paper in the burner. A few little bits of tinder. There we go. Got a platform here made with some of my logs. First time lit. Put a third one in. I've lit the fire as usual. It took very quickly. I've got the water boiling with the rice in at the back. I'm just heating up the frying pan. The stove's on and you can see by the side window it's pumping out quite a bit of heat. I forgot how hot these things are. I've got my rice boiling, chicken seasoned it overnight in the fridge at home, just frying that. Pour some sweet and sour sauce on it. Turn the light off, maybe show you how I've decorated the tent up. I bought all my Christmas lights out down the central pole. It's very cosy in there and very warm. The rice is about 3 or 4 minutes away from being cooked. The chicken's been fried and it's now marinating and cooking in the sauce. About another 5 minutes and I'll be tucking into it. Bon appetit. A crisp autumn evening, wood burner in my stove as it's dark, sitting down comfortably eating a steaming hot sweet and sour chicken with rice. As I said earlier in the video, quick update on the Luceco head torch I bought at the weekend. I made the video about it, the one below this. I read lots of reviews on it before I bought it and they all seemed positive. The only negative one I could find was somebody sort of said the swivel after about 15 days or 15 times broke, but it seems quite good to me. But you know, obviously aware of that, somebody else didn't think much of it. I did say when I quickly topped it up the other day, when you plug the USB cable in either to the mains or into a power pack, a red light comes on. When it's fully charged and it says a full charge takes 2.5 hours, I imagine that's from completely empty. It took me about 15 minutes. It actually goes green, because you know what it's like, sometimes it's a flashing red then it goes steady, sometimes it's red and it goes off. In this case it's red while it's charging and it's green when it's fully charged. Also I've never had a torch with red on before, so let me show you. If you hold that down 3 seconds, you get 2 red lights. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll switch the light off, it might give you a better idea. There you go. Then if you hit it a second time and it flashes. I suppose my one thought about the red was, I've seen people on camping videos filming with the red head torches, probably a bit less harsh on the camera if you want to film. And also, I guess you could always turn this round backwards, and as an emergency it would be a rear light on your bike. Another thing, Richard, one of my viewers, said he had heard that red helps cut down on flies and midges around you when you're camping after dark. He actually heard that somewhere on a YouTube video and tried it himself and found it works. So I haven't yet, so other people might have opinions on that. It's now about 7:20 and I've done all my washing up, finished my food. I'm on my second beer, just sitting here chilling out, looking at that lovely fire. You may notice the flue slightly sloped a little bit. Too hot to adjust it now. Just going to turn the light off actually, just try and get the ambiance here. Look at that, lighting my tent up, all my Christmas lights. So nice, so warm. Mentioned on the last video, I think I'd talk about my plans for next summer. I'd like to have a goal to aim for. I just love the logistics of planning my own cycle tours. Gives me something to sort of aim for, keeps me motivated and focused over the winter. Over the winter, you know, sitting on a wet Saturday afternoon working on my trip and just looking out the window when it's not very nice outside, I get a lot of satisfaction from that. So the plan is, I've mentioned it a few times this summer, James, one of my YouTube subscribers, thank you very much again James, told me about Thankful Villages back in the spring. Now I'd never heard of them, and the story he told me, I hope I'm repeating this right, he rode by a war memorial in a village with no names on it. He was curious enough to go home and look at why that was, and then he shared it with me. And Thankful Villages, it was a term was coined in the 1930s, but in essence it recognises each village in the UK, there's 54 of them I believe, that where all the young people, the young men and some women, went off to fight in the First World War and they all returned safely. There's 54 I believe in England and Wales. Sadly Scotland and Ireland don't have any. And there's research suggests there's also a dozen or so doubly thankful villages where everybody went and served in the Second World War and also came home safely. And it just captured my imagination. When I read up about it, it said the county of Somerset has more than any other county in the UK. It has 9. It was quite easy therefore just for me to like put a route together and just go and explore several of them in my location, and I did that and I made a film about it. I'll put one of those boxes up in the top right hand corner now. You've got to do everything in reverse when you're talking into the camera. And I was just hooked, and what I realised is each one of the villages I visited, so I'm assuming it's all of them but I don't know for sure, have centenary plaques 1919 to 2014, you know, to commemorate the centenary of the start of the First World War. And I was hooked. I just loved them. And as usual, I headed for the centre of the village and homed in on the church. That's where they normally were. And if it wasn't there, it'd be in like a community hub, like a village hall or a remembrance garden. Failing that, I just asked people. And I've been to several more since, and I've got a few single ones planned over the winter. But my tour is, if I show you this map which lists them all, you'll see from that map there's lots of clusters. You can obviously see the 9 around where I live, Somerset, but what I noticed was there was a kind of corridor going from the southwest to the northeast. So in essence what I've done is I've tried to work out a route that will visit as many as possible, leaving corridors either side of them for future years, and that's what I plan to do. Bath up to my nearest one at Little Sodbury, carry on up through the Cotswolds, skirt round the industrial Midlands, all going through villages, heading up to Hull, crossing over the River Humber, heading up north from there, paralleling the coastline. There's 2 more, and then inland to York and get the train home. That'll be over 600 kilometres, a fair old whack, and it take me about a week, I expect, a bit less, maybe a bit more. And that's the plan anyway, to do a Thankful Villages tour. I have made up a basic route so far. I'm probably going to need to edit it a few times. I like the idea of going through villages, places, areas where I just look at signposts and I hardly recognise any of the names. I mean, obviously like the big ones, but sometimes I'll sort of see signposts and there's village names on there and I don't recognise any of them. I really get a kick from that. So I find when I go to the east of the country that happens a lot. So that's why I've been going over to the east the last few years actually. And another thing I came across when I was doing the research, a couple of things really I think it's worth sharing. There were some bikers who raised money, I think it's for the Royal British Legion or Helpful Heroes or possibly both. They organised a motorcycle group ride to all of these villages and it took them 2,500 miles over several days, week probably, and they went to all of them. I thought that was really cool actually. So they took the trouble to work out where they all were and how to get there and visit them all. And then there was another one I've come across. There was this musician, I think he's been to all of them, and whenever he goes there, he just, whatever instrument he's got on him at the time, or sometimes he just uses what's available locally, he just makes a piece of music up, or possibly a song, to try and reflect the story of the village, or really just what's going through his mind at the time. So I really like that. And there's some videos that he posts as well on Vimeo, I think, a different platform. So that's really interesting. So anyway, that's it. Probably June next year, from my hometown in Bath, up through the Cotswolds, skirting around the industrial Midlands, through Lincoln, over the Humber to York, about 100 miles further north, then inland to York, get the train back to Parkway probably, and then ride back from Parkway. That's my plans. I'll open my second beer and pour it in a cup. I never drink out of cans. I'll drink out of bottles sometimes, never out of cans. Just sat here looking at that lovely fire with all these fairy lights in the tent. It's so nice. Just heading down onto the pontoon. I'm now down on the pontoon looking up at the railway bridge. You may not see it, it's quite dark. All these boats, you can tell they're lived in, all quite nicely lit up, subtly. Smell of wood smoke as well. They're burning wood as well for their fuel. Back up to the picnic site. Such a lovely spot. I'm so glad I've actually camped here. As I said earlier in the video, I didn't think I'd ever have reason to actually do it, so it's been good to sort of come out and just test some of my gear, get ready for the new season of hot tent camping. Wow, look at that, looks like a spaceship. Water, I'm steaming a chocolate pudding there. When that's finished, I use the surplus water to do my washing up. That's looking up at the Bath to Bristol bike track. I see a few lights going by. There's a full moon up there as well. Hello, good morning. It's now just gone 7 AM on Wednesday morning. And I slept okay-ish last night, but amazingly it never got dark. There's no artificial light around. The only possible light sources could have been from those boats just over there, but that moon arced right the way across the sky last night, and it just never got dark in the tent. I could have almost read a book in there, that's how light it was. And I had to make the inevitable trip just out here last night, call of nature, and I was just looking up and it was amazing. You could see Orion up there, the winter constellation, and it was just wonderful actually. It's a lovely spot this, and yeah, it just shows, even though it's just over 5 miles from my house, it's what you make it, isn't it? And talking about making things, I'm going to make my breakfast. I'm going to get the stove lit and get some coffee on and some breakfast. I used about 50% of my wood last night and it made the tent really nice and cosy, and even after it burnt down you were still getting the warmth from the embers. So hopefully I've got enough. I did bring a transier just in case I ran out of wood, just to finish things off. Anyway, coffee and cooked breakfast. I've got my breakfast on: bacon, sausages, some beans. I had mushrooms but I left them at home, I forgot them. Bread and butter, ketchup, coffee. This is a very short cycle tour. I just wanted to shake out some of my kit, and to be honest, it doesn't really warrant having the wood burner on, it's so mild, but it's good for trips coming up I got planned. One cooked breakfast in a hot tent. I've really stoked up the stove to try and use up the last of my wood. I think in hindsight I kept too much back from last night. I thought I'd rather have too much than too little, but it was far too much. I could have kept the stove burning for about another hour. If it was wood that I'd gathered from around the site, I'd have just scattered it on leaving, but because this is wood I bought from home, I don't want to be littering in effect, and I certainly don't want to be taking it home. It's hard enough carrying it out here. So I'm just boiling the frying pan in soapy water. It's the best way I know to clean them, and boiling lots of hot water for the washing up outside, and more coffee. This is the end of the River Boyd then. My tent is literally just behind those bushes there in that picnic area. The Boyd starts about 7 miles north of here, just north of the M4. Crosses under this bridge, and this is Boydmouth as I call it. You won't find it on a map, and that's the River Ava flowing along, and that's the pontoon where people moor their barges and boats and live in there. That's the Bath to Bristol bike track running along there. And then you may just see the railings of the bridge going over the river there. I saw, a number of lights going along there after dark last night. I heard a few voices first thing early on, hearing quite a few now because I guess it's sort of like commuter time. I'm just going to take my bucket down to the river, try not to fall in, and scoop some water up, because when I do scatter the ashes I'm going to make sure I really scuff them in and really dampen them down so there's no risk of fire whatsoever. 8:45 now, I'm starting to get myself organised and packed up on that ground sheet in front of the tent. I've partially collapsed the stove, I've taken the lid off, got a branch, I'm manipulating all the embers until they cool, going to roll the flues soon. And then I've been down, got a bucket at the River Avon. I'll scatter the ashes when they're cool enough over there, scuff them in, probably go and get a couple more buckets. I've dumped the ashes, scuffed them in, doused them with plenty of water, 2 buckets actually. I've now just collapsed the stove. Because it's been heated, it's slightly warped and buckled. It sort of tells you, oh, this will go if you just gently manipulate it, or this isn't going to go, it's just not right. So if that makes sense. And you can see, like with the lid, that's slightly buckled, but again that will tie down onto the top and then it'll be going in its bag. Or I still use gloves now, certainly whenever I'm manipulating and manoeuvring the flue about, because it really is very, very sharp. Some would disagree, but I just use that, and also to keep my hands from getting too sooty as well. That's the main body of the stove then, its lid and the stove itself folded down. That's the steel accessory I bring, it's the little collapsible cage. Didn't actually use it last night. There's the damper under there, that's a very thin bit of titanium which actually goes through that slot on there. It just helps control the fire flow. I've rolled the pipe, as you can see. The awkward bit is now getting these and that on either end and the rings, and then it just straps into place there again. That's probably the most awkward part of the whole process. That's the burner and the flue all rolled up and strapped down. You can see there's these nylon straps to hold it down. Gloves will pad it down a little bit, and also I'll fold and pack out that with 2 of my ground sheets. It makes it a little bit, gives it a little bit more depth, but it just means I utilise the storage room in there. Actually, it's about the same as dimensions as a laptop bag, probably a little bit higher, that's all, but it gives you an idea of its size. That's the tent all stripped down, everything in piles ready to be packed into my panniers. Sleeping, cooking, wash, utility, etc. is my camera stuff. Now all I've got to do is pack it and get it onto that. That's it then, ready to strike camp. Everything stowed away in its 4 panniers. Got a bag of rubbish there I'll be getting rid of at the first bin. There's one very close to here. It's only been a short distance. I wanted to shake out my kit really and try a few modifications. Hopefully in the next few weeks I'm going to be wild camping, hot tenting on some Roman roads. I'm packed up, but before I set off on my bike I just wanted to show you this amazing view. So this is the River Avon, that's the Bath to Bristol cycle path over there. So often I ride over that and hardly aware that you're going over a river. It's just one of many bridges. That's looking over at Kelston Roundhill. And that's down to the pontoon. I walked along there last night, so my campsite's back there about 100 metres or so. This amazing view then seems quite a good place to wind the video up. It's been a very short wild camp. I just really wanted to shake out my equipment, try some modifications. Some worked, some didn't. I'm hoping as the winter months progress and it gets a bit colder, I'll go a bit further afield. I'm even thinking of getting a train park journey because of the weight of the bike with everything on board. I've got a few ideas. I maybe ride some Roman roads and camp on those as well. But next up will be next Monday. I've got a youth hostel booked, Swanage, so I'm going to get the early morning train down to Dorchester, pop in and see a mate of mine for coffee. I haven't seen him for a few years. Then I'm going to ride down to Dorset's One Thankful Village, and then I'm going to head along back through Morton. I visited there back in the summer. I'm going to visit Morton Church. It's a wonderful place. A lady recommended it. I went there once. It's absolutely wonderful. It's where Lawrence of Arabia's grave is nearby, and I believe his funeral was held there as well. The church was damaged in the Second World War. I'll explain all this next week. Rather than having stained glass window replacements, it's got engraved windows, and they were commissioned by an artist, and there's several, so I really want to go back and share those with you. It's just such a wonderful place to go back to, and then head along to Swanage Youth Hostel. So that'll be the next trip. Hope you've enjoyed watching this one. As always, take care everybody. Till next time.